about 5 after, I think, if the students are okay, uh, and I have the approval to go ahead and get started from the students, I believe I will get us underway. Are we good, BSA and Student Leadership Council? Are we okay to get going?
Yeah, we're good.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's do this.
Welcome everybody. Hello and hello to all. Thank you for this time together, for meaningful time together, healthy discussion and dialogue. We are really excited for our students today who will lead us in discussion. This is a critical conversation, systemic injustice in America, time for change. And the students will kind of take us along the way, and I will do a couple of housekeeping things right now to kind of establish how the conversation will take place and how we want to be able to move the conversation along. We want to be fluid in doing that, so we have a couple slides to bring up early on, so let's go to the next one to kind of walk us through it. First of all, I will introduce myself, I guess. My name is David Swope, and I am the manager for the Center for Student Diversity and Inclusion at College of DuPage. And I'm excited with the opportunity to be able to meet with this group. This is probably the largest group of COD community that I've been privileged to be with. We've had a lot of other great meetings, so I'm really excited about this opportunity. So we're gonna set the ground for expectations, if you will, the ground rules. We've already encouraged everyone to say hello as you enter into the space. If you want to give a little bit of information that you would like to share as we have the conversation, please feel free to do so. This session will be recorded, and we're doing that so that we can have a good record of our time, quality assurance in terms of how we do it, and then for professional development and to use as resource going forward. We do plan to have more sessions coming up in the future. Go to the next slide, Devin. I think we're good. So a couple things to help us establish how we move the conversation forward. The first thing is we want to have meaningful and constructive dialogue. It's encouraged by the College of DuPage Anti-Racism Action Initiative. I've put the website up there. I want to say thank you to Jennifer Kelly for giving us that as a resource. But in so doing, we want to be able to have mutual respect in our conversation. We want to listen. We want to listen, so that our responses are based upon what we hear and not what we have perceived to hear. Go back. And then we want to be able to have the conversation in a manner of tolerance, with the understanding that people see things differently, and that's okay. We're going to be talking about things that can be challenging. That's why it's called the critical conversation. And there could be differences of viewpoints from constructs and understandings, but a healthy conversation allows tolerances so that we can take in the information that's being shared and that we can use that information going forward to build a stronger base for the work that we do at College of DuPage for its Black community and Black students. So with that, I want to just point out that we should refrain from inappropriate language. I understand people may be very passionate, and it's good to be passionate, but let's use our language in such a way where it's healthy and it's conducive. If there are any inappropriate things that are done here, we are able to find the people who are doing anything inappropriately, and they will be removed respectfully from this conversation, because we're doing that for the well-being of the conversation, so everybody has a fair opportunity to engage without distraction. We already have practiced putting our phones and our computers on mute. So when you want to speak, there's a couple different ways we can do that to exchange with our students and our core panelists. One way is there is a button at the bottom, at least on your computer, where it says reactions. I think it may be on the cell phones, and if it is, the students can kind of walk us through how to do that. But on the computer, to your bottom bar, there is a reaction button, and in that you have the hand symbol. So you can put the hand symbol up if you want to raise a question verbally or make a comment, or you can type it in the chat window. And we will be looking for that information in the chat window so that we can respond to your questions appropriately. If we have a lot of questions, our goal will try to.
I had
be to get to the questions as much as possible. This is going to be student-led, so we're going to let the students kind of take control of the nature of the conversation. But where we have questions, we'll try to read those questions off and see if we can respond to the questions. And then if you have additional questions or comments for this work going forward, or to me and the Office for Center of Student Diversity and Inclusion, that's my email there, swoped28@cod.edu, and I welcome your comments and your constructive criticism regarding, and any questions you may have regarding the work going forward. And then the next slide here. So the overarching purpose, before we turn this thing over to our students, and I'll introduce those who are a part of this session, is to focus on our students and give them a platform for a voice regarding the issues that are impacting us in America right now. So we're going to listen and share on matters of racism, injustice, activism, protest, and inclusivity in the wake of current and past events and its impact on Black people in America and Black people at COD. We want to be able to have that conversation direct. And then at the end, we'll have a call to action in terms of where do we go from here. So I'll first give an acknowledgement to Devin Chambers, who is a counselor, and he's also a co-advisor for the Black Student Alliance. And then I want to also recognize Jennifer Kelly, who works with the library, and she has helped to put together aspects of the technical programming, and she's a great resource. And Dr. Natanya Montez, I want to call attention to Dr. Montez. She'll be working with the students, and she works over the student development team, and she'll come in with the students at the end to identify the call to action. And then our team of faculty and staff, I call it the core panelists because everybody's invited to share, but the core panelist is Professor Theo Darden, Professor of Criminal Justice, Associate Professor Taya Forrest in Criminal Justice, Associate Professor Robert Moorhead, Sociology, Professor Shaheen Chowdhury, Sociology, Stephanie Quark, who's the Coordinator of Student Life Leadership Development, and then adjunct faculty, Dorothy O'Neill, who's with Long-Term Care Administration. And so our students are leading the conversation, and I will turn it over to members of the Black Student Alliance at this time, as well as representatives from the Student Leadership Council. And then they will introduce themselves. So without further ado, bring to you the members of the Black Student Alliance.
Thank you, Dr. Swope, for introducing us. My name is Manuel Nardi. I was the current president of the Black Student Alliance this past academic year. I also had the pleasure with working with Christina in regards to new student orientation, and I also had the pleasure with working with Dr. Stephanie Quirk with the Living Leadership Program.
Hi, I'm Taria Murphy. I was the former president of Black Student Alliance here at COD before Manuel, and I also worked with Christina Henderson with NSO, and I was an orientation leader for 1 year, and then my second year I was a team lead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Justin Cunningham. I am the current vice president of the Black Student Alliance. I got to work with Manuel and Saria and Swope and also Devin this year. And I'm also a criminology major.
If the members of the SLC program would like to introduce themselves too, that'd be great.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming here, as well as David Swope for introducing us. My name is Alexander de Guzman, and I'm the current president of Student Leadership Council term of the year 2020 to 2021. And I'm here today with my fellow officer, Samia, and I also work with Stephanie Quirk, who is also the NSO and Legal Leadership Programmist and my advisor at Student Leadership Council.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Samiha Sayed. I serve as student trustee to the Board of Trustees and as an officer of the Student Leadership Council. I've worked with David Swope, Stephanie Quirk, and Stephanie Quirk is the advisor of the Student Leadership Council, of which I serve as an officer. In the upcoming weeks, the Student Leadership Council will be collaborating with the Black Student Alliance to further the 846 movement through student-led initiatives, activism, and advocacy. Not just a moment, a movement. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mirajuddin Said. I am actually currently a student at College of DuPage pursuing surgical technology schooling. My professor, to be honest, recommended me to attend this, and it is actually a project he wants me to work on. So this is the only thing, this is why I'm looking into it, and it interests me. So I just wanted to learn more about you guys and this topic that is going around now.
All right, thank you everyone that was able to join on the call today. We really appreciate you wanting to learn more about this topic that's undergoing right now. And as we have this conversation, we hope it opens some eyes, I hope it changes some hearts, and hopefully we learn new things that we didn't know before. Now, as Samia stated, this is not a moment, this is a movement that has been impacting our country for 400 plus years now. Racism, discrimination dates back all the way to 1619. The oppression of Black people has been instilled into this country, and we're seeing it to this day. People such as Emmett Till, back in 1955, a 14-year-old boy who was accused of harassing a woman and was kidnapped by racist white men and killed on sight. Back when Rodney King, back in 1991, was pulled over by police and was brutally beaten, that started the LA riots and started the famous quote, "Can't we all get along?" Back in 2012, when Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old boy, was walking down the sidewalk, had a hood on, and a neighborhood watchman thought he was suspicious and followed him and took it upon himself to take his life. 2014, Michael Brown, an 18-year-old boy just walking down the street, had his life taken. Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, Alton Sterling. Right after Alton Sterling, a day later, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland.
Oh, hi, today's my birthday today, because I'm 29 years old.
Well, happy birthday to you. We also have Freddie Gray, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and now currently the latest, George Floyd. This is a continuous cycle, a cycle of lives being taken over police brutality. It's because of incidents like this why my parents—
Dude, listen, today's my birthday day, dude. I'm 29 years old.
It's because—
listen, today's my day.
It is because of incidents like this why my parents feel the need to have conversations of why I should be cautious in every little thing I do. Just walking down the street, I have to make sure I'm aware of my surroundings. If I interview for a job, I have to make sure my qualifications are on point so it doesn't close any doors that my skin color might. I don't have luxuries of feeling comfortable conversating with the police. My friend told me about a story about her neighbors were literally playing in a police car. The kids were playing in a police car And that I couldn't believe that. I couldn't see myself doing that. Why is that? Because there's this fear in my heart that with anything I might do, any little thing I might do, it might lead to the worst thing possible at the end of my life. But here's the thing. It's not just police brutality that is the problem here. It runs deeper than that. There's always been racism. There's always been discrimination. It goes deeper into what this skin color triggers. Police officers, justify using brutal force with saying their lives are in danger, saying they fear for their life. That means that this skin color triggers a sense of danger, a sense of you're not safe. And it runs deeper to when you're walking by a Black person, you clutch your purse to make sure nothing happens. When you see a group of Black people walking by, you make sure that nothing else is going to happen from them just being together as a group. It runs deeper than just police brutality. It's the sense of seeing each other as human beings. It's the sense of seeing each other as our lives are worth living. It's a sense of making sure that we acknowledge that privilege does exist. It's the truth. White privilege exists. And that is also why we need to broaden our expansion of what civil rights actually means. We got to expand our vision. We have to make sure we're seeing people for who they are, not as a threat or a suspect first, and then a citizen second. We have to make sure that there's no hate driven within our hearts. It starts in our heart. That's where it starts from. Because I truly believe racism is learned. You're not born into racism. You're not born into racism. That's learned. And it might not be your fault. That's fine. But you have to acknowledge the fact that that is a problem happening today. Did you know that Black people are three times more likely to be killed by a police officer than white people? That's just the facts. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, that is the facts. And the latest incident, that shows it right there in front of our faces, on camera. Imagine the amount of people that have gone through that same thing, but it wasn't recorded. Not everything's caught on camera, but we know it's happening. We have to acknowledge that it's happening. That's also why I felt confident in leading the Black Student Alliance this past academic year. My goal was to change that status quo. My goal was to change that stereotype that when Black people come together, they're just loud, they're just disruptive. I wanted to change that. Even back in middle school, back in high school, it was little microaggression that I didn't catch on until I got older. Little cracks and jokes that people would, say, like, if I'm speaking proper, man, why are you speaking so white? Little microaggressions that I didn't catch on, that I didn't even pay any mind to until now. That tells me this has always been happening. It is deeper. And now that the world is acknowledging this fact, we can't let it pass by. This cannot be a moment. This cannot just be another trend. This is not a trend. This is a continuous cycle that needs to stop. And I'm just gonna leave it on this. Until we can see each other as human beings, until we can see each other as equals, there will be no justice. There will be no peace. Until then, I hope we can strive towards that. I hope we keep moving forward into a better direction. I hope that this opens some of our eyes to the reality of the world. Because I'm here to tell you, this has always been happening. And George Floyd was just the last straw. This has always been happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel, for giving us that speech. That was beautiful. To piggyback based on what Manuel was saying, this is not just something that is of recent events. For Black people, we've been going through this for centuries, through generations now, and I feel like it's just now that we finally have the ball in our court, not only on a national scale, but on a global scale as well. People from all over the world have gathered together to scream the same thing, that Black Lives Matter. And I think now more than ever, it shows how important it is that we take note to what is going on in our country and also in our world today. For the most part, we've seen it as police brutality, even though there's been different cases of why our Black brothers and sisters have been needlessly killed. But I think for me, I want to focus on police training reform. Why is it that police are just so desensitized? And why is it that as a human race, we can't come together and find a way to coexist in the same country? I think it's important that we should light on all the names that we've lost. And like Mela said, the names that we've lost, we haven't seen due to there being no media coverage or no camera there to cover what was going on and protect them. I think it's important that we just note that this is a time that the ball is really in our court. So what's next? What are we going to do about it now? So many times this happens and we all rally together and we scream the same things and we fight for justice. And sometimes justice is served and sometimes it is not. And then we go back to normal lives. Well, we can't do that this time. For the first time, everyone is on the same accord about the same goal. And that's to describe to everyone, whether you're in politics, you're in education, you're in BSA, that Black lives do matter, and it's time to have laws as to why they do and to change the narrative of what's going on in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Taria, for that speech. And it just brings up all the more importance of change, and the change that every one of us, no matter our age, no matter what we look like, and no matter who we are, we can instill that change. And it starts with us through, actions of voting and taking the time to be educated and learn the system, because right now our system is broken and now it's just in the limelight to all of us. And we keep referring back to this quote, it's not a moment, it's a movement, because we want to continue this every day until we get the change we need. Because, like Manuel was saying, there are so many more names out there than just Tamir Rice and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. All of those names, there's many other names that we've never heard and that has never been recorded. And, even today, right now in this second, there could be another name that we will never know about. And now is the time to bring that to the forefront and instill that change that we all so much demand. And it starts with us, and it starts here, having those uncomfortable conversations so we can instill that change. Thank you.
There are other students that want to comment at this time. Either Samia or Alex.
Yeah, I mean, like when Justin was talking about how like the change starts from us, that's something we really need to take in. Like when an act of violence is committed, when a human being is murdered or an act of violence is just happening in broad daylight, it's as though this injustice has been committed against all of humanity. So we, for the sake of mankind, we must stand up against this injustice. As student leaders, we must choose to engage in the conscious decision to stand in solidarity and advocate for racial justice. It is very clear that racism still exists in this country today, and the pain associated with it runs very deep. So as student leaders, we need to take action. We need to support all of our community and make that evident. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Aisha. I'm part of the BSA club and the Human Service Network club. I've had the opportunity to be out actually protesting. I'm a part of a couple of Stop the Violence organizations, And I've been out here in Joliet protesting. A couple of days I didn't go, just kind of like needed a break because it has been overwhelming, because you have had a negative side and you have had a positive side of what's going on. I agree with Justin when he says that it goes to voting, because a lot of people don't realize that voting does count. Voting does help as far as people that we elect in office. And we really need to dig deep in doing the research instead of just, going to the ballots and voting like, I just know this name, or, I just know this person, let me just bubble this in. Like, really doing the homework and research on some of these candidates that are being elected, because a lot of them are put on a good national front and claim that's what they propose to do for the world, for the town, city council, or whatever, but it's totally the opposite. It's not genuine. So if you do a little bit of research on your people before you vote, that would also make a big difference. I have been through some of the things that Manuel have stated, as far as my kids also is speaking proper, because I've put them in schools because I want them to excel on a higher level. I also put my kids in situations so that they're not naive. Even though my son's 7, I still teach him as an African American male on things that and how he should act when it comes to police things, or how the world is as far as racism, as far as people that are non-racist. I am a firm believer and have always been taught to treat people the way as you would want to be treated. So I really don't see color. And even though I have been through some racial things, and I won't sit here and lie to you and say that it didn't piss me off, it made me angry, but it helps you grow tough skin. I have relatives of all nationalities, so I try to see the bigger picture, the bigger outcomes, but at the same time, just try to be a little bit open-minded, because as Manuel and a couple of others stated, that I do feel like racism, you're not born with it. I feel like that it can be a taught behavior, because you do have people that are out here teaching people not to believe in God. You have people out here teaching to believe and worship the devil. You have people out here teaching all type of things that's going on in the world. And I just think that with Mr. Floyd's situation, that this has been something that has been going on like for years, and it's sad that another person's life had to be taken in order for people, which have we've been out here protesting of all nationalities, to realize that it's time to really stand up and do something about it. I think more eyes are being opened, because they're seeing now, like, okay, this is happening for real. People are getting tired, and it's time to stand up and really make a difference. I'm glad that we have this Zoom to talk with everybody with all nationalities and get all different type of opinions and hear all different types of ideas on what we should do. But I think it starts within ourselves. It starts within our BSA group, at homes and families, for us to just take this seriously, not always take it into a violent matter, because everyone that's African American, Hispanic, or white, or police officers aren't violent or have the characteristics of what has been going on for a while, but also currently. And I mean, I'm not sure how everybody's religious beliefs are, but just have faith and just keep praying for the town, because it seems like a lot of people aren't realizing that God is a big part of, or whoever you serve is a big part of making a change also, and having faith in that. And that's all I really have to say.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
so
you.
go ahead, Alex.
Oh, okay. Everything that's lead up to what Samia said, Justin, Taria, and Manuel said, it's all leading to a point where, have we tasted too much freedom to act now? Or have we tasted too much freedom to, is initially like the movement we're in, it's not a moment, but a movement these people who have been named down the line from like 400 years till now, have we like tasted too much freedom to change? And to answer this question, like it's not too late to change where we are. We as student leaders need to be upfront and like tell everyone out here that says this too much freedom is basically what's toxic in like the environment. We haven't like done anything to keep the movement going, as like this momentum right here right now, this is the history we're going through. And like at this moment, the year 2020 is a year of change, and this change is where we need to step up and how we can like organize this as much as possible. So as student leaders, as I'm seeing this, I may not be Black, I may not be you, but I am with you. I can feel this like tension that's going on between you people, because as I from like another country, I can't like say that the violence is over. The violence still keeps going, and there are some people out there that like needs to step up as us. We are stepping up, so we have this discussion right now, and that's what I'm like feeling right now. And like I like to say thank you all who like participate in talking. And as a president, I want this change to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, and to Alex's point, like we are with you. And like the fact that we are with you, that's the change that needs to happen. So we are the change, students.
Okay. Are there any other students that would like to comment on anything that's been said thus far? If so, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to voice your opinion and kind of express yourselves and share based upon what you heard at this point. So if there are any other students that would like to speak, please feel free to do so. Okay, what we're going to do now then, we're going to put this in the hands of our faculty and staff and allow them to dig a little deeper, perhaps with some questions to exchange with the students and with those of you all who are on the Zoom call here. We're going to start with Professor Theo Darden. So Professor Darden, if you would come on and present and discuss for a few minutes and share on the topics as it impacts you, and then as you would engage the students and the rest of the callers as well. Theo?
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you, students, for your intelligent take and introspection about this very important issue. As you rightfully indicated, you're talking about 400 years plus now of constructed racism, that every time there is a move to deconstruct it, it tends to peter out. I don't know exactly where to begin. There's so many layers to this. The police, which is certainly an area of my expertise, is a microcosm of the larger issue, which plagues this nation. The police are only a part of it. The historic concept of the police in America has been surrounded by oppression, from the Southern slave patrols, which were the first resemblance, of a law enforcement agency, individuals paid to ensure that slaves would not insurrect or run away, and so on and so forth. And certainly policing in the North, which one of the first law enforcement agencies was Boston, Massachusetts, which was basically politically controlled by the local politicians and their boroughs and such things. And they actually were paid to ensure that the new immigrants to the country remained in their place, whether they were Irish, whether they were Italians, and so on and so forth, because the social construction of race was still being built. What we know as white today was not white 100 years ago or 200 years ago. And so Italians were not considered white at one point, or another. But to take that concept and to move it forward, even to after the Civil War, when Reconstruction was supposed to begin, it basically petered out as soon as it was supposed to begin. And the criminal justice system in the Jim Crow South, which was born out of that reconstruction, it was the police who enforced those rules. It was the justice system who mass incarcerated then, if you will, to look into a loophole in the 13th Amendment in which blacks, if they were incarcerated, could be made to be enslaved again. Then you move that, movement, Jim Crow, 100 years. It was always the police. It was always the police, whether it was in the riots of 1919 or 1943, or we can go through the whole 1960s. And generally, when you get to the Kerner Report in 1968, it became that report that produced from the Johnson administration that said it was the police that sparked, many of these things. And then they outlined what the causes were in terms of the inequalities that Negroes were facing at that time. Most of that report, basically all of it, was thrown in the garbage. And if you read it today, you would swear that was what was written in 1968, we would still be talking about today. And so I get everybody's pain, but there's an underlying issue here that you must consider.
Today's my birthday today. I'm 29 years old today. I brought my friend to come for my birthday today.
There's an underlying issue that you must consider.
No, listen, I brought my friends to come. Happy.
And what that is that we have robbed, 6, 8, generations of people of something that belongs to them, and that's history. To call something African American History Month or Black History Month in February is to actually continue to create the divisiveness in the country. It's not Black history, it's American history. Call it what it is. We keep running away from it, and our children don't know it, and our grandparents didn't know it. And so that way it can continue to perpetuate itself. But I just want to leave you with this. This is something from my multiculturalism class, in which I left every student with at the end of this semester. And if you read between the lines, it has the underpinnings of what we must do going forward, besides voting, besides making ourselves aware, and try to, instead of understanding other people, you have to understand yourself and how you got to where you are and how you got to believe what you believe and what you think, and then perhaps start to address the things of what you don't know and actually admit that you don't know them. But this is what I said to my students. I said, every life is born with a journey that is influenced by those who are charged with its care. The faults of the caregivers become the faults of the children. However, if the caregivers are wise, they are mindful that they are human and prone to mistakes and are careful to stay out of the children's way. They provide the child with love, an opportunity for unbound knowledge, and a safe space where their curiosities are fueled by the wind and the spirit of their candle wicks are protected from being extinguished by it. In the end, the children's destinies are their own. The world is anew, and a new cycle is born with ideals that unite souls and are prepared to birth new ideals.
Thank you, Theo. Does anybody have a question or a comment, a student, in response to what they've heard from Theo Darden? Because I want to have the exchange, and then we'll go on to our next faculty or staff panelists. If any student wants to comment in response to that.
I do have a question. Just your opinion on this. Do you think, is it too late to change this whole system, change the whole system of policing? Is it too late? Do we have to make a new one? Do we have to scrap the old, make a new? Is it too late?
No, thank you for the question, Manuel. It's never too late. The human spirit is never too late. As long as we have breath inside of us, we can change. We just have to have the will and commitment to change. What we see in police training today is what we saw 50 plus years ago when we actually went to more of an organized structure. What the general population don't know about police training is this, is that there are no two states that are the same. And there is no federal mandate about any police training in this country. There are 6 academies in the state of Illinois, and the state of Illinois outlines what each academy must teach, what must train, but however, how it's trained is up to each academy. And so there's a lot of moving parts and missing pieces. to this whole thing, but I think we have to look at the philosophy of the police. People consider and believe that somehow the police actually have an impact on crime. And that's just simply not true. They have very little impact on crime. The evidence is overwhelming about that. And in that sense, people believe the more police, the less crime. Over the last 30 years, we have seen the greatest crime drop, violent crime drop in this country's history, but yet the police have continued to militarize. They have continued to move themselves away from the public that they're supposed to serve. But the police belong to the people, and the people have to reclaim the police. It's not vice versa. The people know what's good for them. You know, Robert F. Kennedy stated, he said, you know, every society gets the police it deserves. And the meaning behind that is what they will allow themselves to be police. And so when you see over-policing in Black and brown communities, it is because the citizens have allowed it. Not only those Black and brown communities who speak out, but really the communities at large, the ones, that voting bloc that votes in these mayors, that votes in, you know, sheriff's departments and so on, or sheriffs and so on and so forth. You know, what are they really standing for? There's a great book that I challenge everybody to read, and it's called Not a Crime to Be Poor. You know, read that book. And that book will tell you about some of the things the criminal justice system has weaponized generally against poor people, but the police have been at the forefront of that. And how they basically use the excuse to say, well, we just police where the crime is. It's like you're creating your own reality. There's not as much violent crime as people would imagine, not nearly as much, in fact. And so to get back to the essence of your first question, of course we can change. We just have to have the will and commitment to change. And then we have to have committed people who understand exactly what we're asking for and exactly what we need to go out there and get it done.
Fantastic, thank you. There's a question from Nate. Nate, you said you wanted to pose a question?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Nate. I'm here because I thought it'd be interesting. I'm a cop, and I have been a cop for 5 years. And so to piggyback off of Professor Theodore, the state of Illinois, I actually went through the police academy through COD. The state of Illinois, the training that we do is obviously on the basic laws and everything for the Illinois Compiled Statute. And in addition to that, we actually do, my department is actually very fortunate enough where we have a lot of funding for training, in which case we had the Illinois Department of Human Services come down and teach about, they actually have, everybody's used to the golden retrievers that how they want to be treated. The Illinois Department of Human Services actually implemented a new rule called the Platinum Rule, and it's treat others how they want to be treated. Or excuse me, it's how, I might be rephrasing it wrong, but basically my interaction with somebody else, it's treat them how they should be treated. So there is a lot of training out there as far as to curb the implicit bias and everything that we're learning about in the constitutional law class. And I just want to make that known that it's, yes, there's a dark past to the Constitution and to everything that's happened, but there is, prior to this incident, there is also continual movement and momentum moving forward to better educate and to better give people the understanding for especially me as a law enforcement officer, on how to deal with different things. As far as the militarization as Professor Theo was talking about, one of the issues we have is my department's not very militarized. We do have rifles, and that's more of, and it's a protective measure. On it, the thing we teach in the academy is there's always going to be a gun every single call we go to because we carry guns, just part of our use of force thing. And so with the militarization, we still have regular basic squad cars. The only thing that my department actually has in response to more, it'd be just, we have regular rifles, and that helps with more long distance incursions or more. It offers a better protection, such as things like Sandy Hook and things like that, where a pistol's not as accurate in order to neutralize the threat. And that's one of the things that they talk about in the academy is neutralizing. It's not, my job isn't to kill people. My job is to, as Professor Theo has mentioned, is to be a servant for society. And I think I do a pretty good job as far as that personally. And I think my department does a very good job as that professionally. And with that being said, there's also use of force instances where we have to use force. I can't just be nice and kind to everybody, and a lot of it comes down to their actions. It's the way they teach in the academies. It's a reactive force to what the threat is in front of us. So I hope that so that's pretty much all I wanted to say in regards to that matter.
I just like to interject, and Nate, thank you for those comments. And I think what everyone should take away from Nate's comments is this is something that has not been said and not discussed. Not every agency is the same. There are over 14,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. And what you see in the media is a microcosm or a small portion of those agencies. Every agency is different from their leadership. When he talks about the golden rule, it's a leadership principle. The golden rule is, don't treat others like you would like to be treated. Treat them as they want to be treated. And the point that Nate really, I think, was saying without really bringing it, to bear, however, is to get back to each and every one of those 14,000 law enforcement agencies are different. They are not even all trained the same. They are not led the same. And that's another thing that most people don't know about law enforcement in this country. It's very different than other countries. Many countries nationalize their police or have many smaller in terms of agencies for them to control. They have better control, such as the UK, such as Ireland, Germany, and so on and so forth. Not to mention that they're better trained and better educated. The vast majority of police officers in the United States has a high school diploma. We're asking people who have graduated high school, between the ages of 21 and 25, with less than a bachelor's degree, to strap on a badge and a gun, to have a minimum of 14 weeks of training, and then go out there and deal with this very diverse nation, with all the socializational baggage that they bring to work with them. And how do you unpack that? It becomes very difficult if you do not have the right training standards, the right training procedures, the right leadership, and so on and so forth. Hence, you continue to see the same things over and over and over again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Theo. Thank you. And I want to get to as many those who have put on the list for questions. And so we kind of have them in the order that they've come in. I believe June had raised an issue, if I'm pronouncing that right, J-U-N, Tucker. Is that correct? If not, we had Michael, who had a question. Michael?
Yeah. June said.
Sorry, go ahead, Manuel.
Oh, no, I was just confirming that he said June right. That's all.
No, so what I was going to build on the question that you asked, and both of Theo's answers, and building on the most recent response that Theo gave, is first an example of a place where things can change and where it's at a very local level. Because when Michael Brown was murdered, Ferguson was a majority minority city, right? So the population of Black people was well above 50%, but the mayor, the chief of police, the city council, all of these people were white. And one of the biggest reasons was because the Black population had a really, really low response rate, voting response rate. And within the last number of years since Michael Brown was murdered, the administration has really, really changed. And the election that was in Missouri 8 days ago, right? So that Missouri had their election this last time. They elected a mayor of Ferguson, and if I remember correctly, it's a Black woman is the new mayor of Ferguson. And so the city council is majority Black, and the mayor is Black. I'm not sure about the police chief and all that stuff, but anyway, when there is the will, it can change, and Ferguson is an example.
Yeah, Mike, just that police agency has changed as well drastically in terms of its makeup, which was at that time at the killing of Michael Brown, it was about 88 to 92% white for a city that was almost 70% black, which is very commonplace in the United States around urban areas that you find those things. But even that police agency has now really recruited and actively a number of African-American officers who now number, I believe, close to 30.
Thank you.
Okay, I think in the order that we have them, and thank you for whoever gave the comment in terms of looking at the raising of hands in the participants bar. Thank you for that. I think we had Jamie that had a question or comment. Jamie?
Oh, yes. I just kind of wanted to build off of what Professor Darden was talking about use of force, and just the fact that it can be changed, because this past semester, I was in a ethics and professionalism class from Worcester University, and one of the things that I wrote about was with excessive use of force, there was also the issue of people with mental illness and how officers would respond to that. And that's where crisis intervention training was introduced, and they were better able to, avoid unnecessary loss of life because they understood that these individuals can't fully comprehend what's going on. And so I just kind of wanted to make that comment to build off that, like, change can happen. It can be done. It was changed for needless, deaths of individuals with mental illness. So why is it so difficult to do it now when it comes to minorities?
Was there a response? I think it was a question.
My response to Jaime, one of my former students, hi Jaime, thanks for that great comment. But you're absolutely right. Look, there are things that can be done. The CIT training, the crisis intervention training, it was well behind, but I think he brings up even another comment that, students and people need to consider when you talk about the police. We have asked the police now to take on all of these roles in which they were never equipped, never educated, and never trained to do. And they're still not equipped, educated, and trained to do this. And one is mental illness. And many of these cities now who are talking about defunding, now you have to understand what defunding means. It has several different meanings. It's to most people, they hear defund, and that's take everything away. But there's actually several things that could go through that. You should see what happened. Look up what happened in Camden, New Jersey, when they fired their entire police department and decided to start over. That's a really good example. So if you need something to reference and look for evidence. But to Jaime's point that I'm making here is that now we're asking police to do things that they shouldn't be doing. And one of my mentors who was seen as a giant in the policing field, Herman Goldstein, he passed away in January of this year, and I had the privilege to speak with him for about 3 hours last summer before he died. He said, for years, and he wrote parts of the '68 commission's report for Lyndon B. Johnson. He wrote part of the Knapp Commission's report in New York in the Frank Serpico era of police unethical behavior, and he started the concept problem-oriented policing. But Herman stated this, why are our police chiefs so willing to take on the role of actually answering to everything when it is not, their position to do so? And you begin to put police officers in a very precarious situation when they only have the basic training to deal with criminal activity and react and respond to it. They're not mediators of mental health. How do you deal with people who are addicted to drugs and so on and so forth? But this is what we're asking people who have the least abilities to do those things, rather than our human service providers and so on and so forth. And so many of these communities that are talking about defunding is actually talking about moving some of that funding to those other organizations that can have a much better impact, on providing help for people. Listen to what police officers say when they want to, when people who want to go into the field. They say, I want to help people. Well, that is really not exactly what the police do. Writing tickets to people is really technically not helping them, in particular to large numbers of poor people who cannot afford it. Victimization, you react and respond to it. They solve very little crimes, 13% of burglaries, 12%, of thefts. In some large communities, less than 60 or 30% of homicides. And so what actually are the police doing? And to just wrap it back around to Jaime's point, yeah, we can, give them a basic training in crisis intervention, but they still are hoping that the real experts who have studied psychology and human services show up to actually have that impact, in that community. We really need to rethink this whole thing.
So what we're going to do for the conversation to get other voices involved along with Professor Darden, we will get to as many questions as we can, and we know there's some that are going to make comments, but I do want to see if we can get to one of our other core faculty panelists, and then we will go from that to the questions in the order that we receive them. So everybody hang tight, but I want to see if we can kind of move the conversation along. So I'm going to call on Associate Professor Taya Forrest, if she would make a couple of comments, and then we'll continue the conversation with the questions as you have them. Taya.
Good afternoon. I am super excited to be here, not just for the conversation, but because our students are awesome. Don't you think? Our students came, they created this thing, they set forth this event, and I am so proud of you guys. So I just wanted to say that out loud. I know people are saying it in the comments. I think from my perspective, I'm gonna look at it from two different angles. So as an attorney, I want to make clear that the Attorney General of Minnesota believes that he can prove the elements of the crime. And I'm speaking specifically to George Floyd, because it would take hours for us to unpack everything that's going on. But what's before us right now is George Floyd. And the elements that they have been charged with is 609.195, and that statute is murder in the third degree, as well as 609.05, aiding and abetting murder in the third degree. So what that means is that the Attorney General of Minnesota believes that he right now possesses enough evidence to prove the elements as indicated in the statute. I think that's a really important point, because a lot of times we like to say we don't want to acknowledge that this is criminal, but the Attorney General has already made that determination. So we can set that aside. This is a criminal matter. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in regards to the police, we have to recognize that our police are named law enforcement, but I can tell you most of them are not interested in criminal law, which I teach, constitutional law, which I teach. So how do you enforce what you don't know? It's just that simple. So we have to encourage them to get this information prior to getting into an academy or extending the amount of time in the academy. And secondly, I'd like to direct my attention to the restorative justice piece. As a restorative justice practitioner, we must understand something specifically that's unique to this group, this corps of cops. So 2 out of the 4 cops have been on the job for 4 days. 4 days. 1, 2, 3, 4 days. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of that, but from a restorative process, you begin to say, whatever occurred way before they became officers. So we have to start addressing who and what and how we're recruiting. And after we do that, I'll leave you with what the Floyd family said they were interested in, which I believe restorative justice is all about. Restorative justice says there was a harm that was committed. We have already established that it was a crime. That harm needs to be repaired. For those of us who do not like the word reparations, that's what that means, repairing the harm. In order for that to occur, the Floyd family says that they would like to sit down with these officers and hear what would make them think that this was an appropriate action to take. Now, you may not agree with it and it may not be of interest to you, but in fact, if we're able to do that, we're looking to prevent this type of harm from occurring later. So it isn't just about one case in one moment. We can take this and learn from it and then implement it in a way that will have a ripple effect across all courts. The court is not the place for you to receive some sense, as far as the person who was harmed, some sense of justice. The court metes out consequences, and it's important to have consequences. But what people who have been harmed, and I'm on purpose not calling them victims, because they're not victims, they've been harmed. What people who have been harmed really desire is to know why they were harmed. The only person who really can have that conversation is stakeholders in the community, and specifically those who committed the harm. So what I would like to say to the students, I would like to challenge you to say, how do we get a more restorative approach to this? Because if we do not, this will not be the last incident. It certainly wasn't the first. And so it's important that we actually are able to encourage those who believe they can come through and get recruited, not know the law, not know con law, not know criminal law, and enforce it. So that would be what I would leave with the students. What can we do? Especially since most of my students are law enforcement enthusiasts.
Thank you, Ty. I want to make sure that we get to questions, and those questions can be fielded by, any member of the core panelists. So Jill, I think you had a question. So I want to make sure you have an opportunity to raise your question.
Well, the question I was thinking of that I thought up a while ago, but I'm trying to remember what it is now. I guess at a basic level, from what was just discussed by Toya, can we make that kind of criminal justice education and constitutional education part of officer training? Either a requirement for the academy or during their time in the academy. I've had students myself who were planning to go into the police academy, so I did make sure to work more criminal law, criminal justice history into my history courses, just to make sure I could cover that for them. But any ideas would be useful about that.
So I would first just start by saying, Professor Darden, myself, Professor Davison, and Professor Ramirez Thompson, we have done a very intentional method. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but we have changed our name from criminal justice to justice studies. That was very intentional. We recognized as a faculty that it is no longer okay for us to focus just on the quote unquote criminal. We have to have a more holistic approach. And to your question, I implement restorative justice and restorative practices in every course I teach. There's not a time where that doesn't happen. Most time my students do not like it, but that's okay. I know that at some point they'll be able to refer back to it and use it in situations that may escalate beyond what they're used to receiving. In fact, I think that most times if you have a restorative approach, you have more people who come together and that creates an agreement so that they can move forward. No one is happy that they have experienced harm, whether it's criminal or otherwise, but people actually can learn from that incident and help others who may feel that this is the way to go. So that's more, I believe, a more holistic approach to where we are.
Thank you, Taya. I want to have two students come in that may have comments and or questions. Jaman, and then after Jaman, Aisha, I believe, had. So Jaman and Aisha in that order. Jaman?
Hi. Hi, I'm Jamon Lewis, BSA alum and COD alum. I'm currently at Illinois State on the student government there. And I want to start this out by saying, I believe it was 1963 when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we can not stop, we cannot be peaceful while the Negro is the victim of the horrible injustices of police brutality. And what he said then still rings true today. One of the strategies of the civil rights movement was walking through the streets in peace and actually waiting on the police force to abuse them so that they could show the world the brutality. And so we can see that strategy, as successful as it was, is still happening today. I think whoever brought up the concept of divesting from the police forces, that's very important, because I'm just going to bring up Chicago's police force, their budget. They have over $1 billion budget with hundreds of millions dedicated just to weapons, right? Most of the police officers don't live in the city and they don't actually know the communities that they're policing. And so I'd also like to bring up a Guardian article, I believe from 2019 published. It examined police officers and what do they see when they see Black people on first sight. And in that study, it concluded that most officers see more so than a human, a gorilla or some type of feral animal. That was what the conclusion on average most of the officers saw on first sight of seeing a Black person. And so now we have police forces that in most major cities, which is a lot of the issues that we're looking at, and a lot of these cities that are very segregated, so a lot of people who are white don't come into contact with Black people. They're having a dangerous bias with dangerous weapons on the first time that they see people. And then we're seeing these issues play out again and again and again and again. And so in Minnesota, the city council just voted to completely abolish the police department. Now, what that means is that not that policing is going to completely just stop, but that money that was dedicated to policing is now going to go back into the communities and is going to be funneled into places that can, one, help the community grow. Because right now we're seeing, not only in this last period of unrest, a reaction to the police force, we're seeing a reaction to the pandemic, to poverty, to all of these things that are parts of systemic racism that go and funnel into the same injustices. And so we need to look at an overarching solution. What can we do to solve the issue of poverty? Because like Mr. Darden said, poverty is not a crime. I would like people to look at the book, The Algiers Motel Incident. It's based on the incidents that happened during and preceding the 1967 Detroit riots. The movie Detroit is also based on these incidents. I like people to research those. And when people say divest from police and defund the police, please do not think that this is some big overarching thing that we can't do, or when you think of these things, don't just have a fair reaction like this can't happen because we need police. Yes, we need police, but we need police that know the community. We need police that are more apt to using de-escalation and non-lethal weapons first. And we need police that understand the minds of the people that they're policing, that they're currently in the community with. So just hearing this discussion, I mean, we've seen riots before, we've seen movements, we've seen police brutality. Now, what's going to make this different? I think I'm encouraged by seeing the world's reaction to this, but I want to see policemen and different agencies get involved to help turn the tide on this, because this is a deep-rooted systemic bias that started with slave patrols and it started with brutality that has just ballooned and got out of control. No police department, in my opinion, needs $1 billion budget to police a community which does not have as much violent crime as people think anyways. We need to we need to divest. We need to take a hard look at ourselves and every institution that we live in and the injustices that face those people, and try to slowly move towards equality in healthcare, in terms of food security, in terms of education, that is going to be key, and in terms of the community policing. I think if people lived in those communities and police themselves, they have no incentives to beat themselves up or to hurt themselves, because police brutality is more than just a fatality. It can be beating someone up, it can be talking down to someone, it can be so many things on a mental, psychological, and physical level. So I just like to leave that thought with everybody and just think again about the research and these studies that have shown us these irreversible truths, or these irreparable truths, and we need to really move towards reparations and restorative justice. And I really think the United States as a country needs to do the work to really say, 400 years ago, we made a mistake, and we're going to do everything we can to repair that so that everybody can live on an equal ground and have housing and food and all these things.
I'd just like to comment to Jaimin. Thank you for that. That was excellent. That was really excellent. I just like to say just quickly, people fear crime and they think that the police somehow, and I mentioned this before, controls that. But Jaimin just mentioned something. If you reduce your police force, that's not going to be correlation with an increase in your criminal activity. Criminal activity, when you look at criminology and how things socially, leads to people getting outside of the social norms, it's generally inequality, especially when you talk about violent crime. When you look at violent crime around the world, it's inequality that really is at the base of the cause of violent crime. It is not poverty. People get it mixed up when they say, oh, poverty is a cause of crime. Poverty doesn't cause crime. 98% of the people who live in poverty are not criminals. They don't do anything. They're just trying to get by. But what happens is the pressures that are placed on people in terms of inequality drives those things. So when you hear someone say that, hey, if you abolish policing, that somehow criminal activity is just going to go, on a rampage, that's simply not true. It doesn't work like that. And that's very Neanderthal, a very Neanderthal way of thinking about what the police do and what they can and cannot do. So, Jaimin, thanks for bringing that up. You can reduce your police ranks without harming the safety of your public. The vast majority of communities are safe anyway.
Thank you for the comments. We want to go to, I think I had a little out of order. The way I'm getting them, I'm trying to process so I can have opportunities for anybody who wants to raise a voice in the discussion. So if I'm pronouncing the name right, Iqbal?
Hi, this is Iqbal.
Iqbal, thank you.
Yeah, I'm an immigrant, and I was a doctor in another country. I moved to States in 2008, and I was so very pleased when we had our first Afro-American president, and I was lucky to be among the crowd when he was taking the oath. And we felt so lucky that we are in a free country now, because we had faced discrimination in other countries. Having said that, in the past 10, 12 years, I have raised 2 kids. They are in college, and myself, I'm also in college, still studying. But on occasions, we did feel that that there is discrimination based on race, culture, background. It is still going on in the minds of the people. Now, in this particular situation, the police reforms, no doubt, they are necessary. They have to be brought in. I myself had to face, I feel I had faced discrimination by the police, and I was in a situation that I believe was because of my background. And definitely we need to bring that change in the police. But my question and my comment is that what actively are we doing for our young generation in the schools and in colleges to make them understand the racial equality? Are we planning actively on those things? Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do with that question is I'm going to direct that to Dr. Moorhead, and then let him address the question, and then bring in some points along those lines. Dr. Moorhead, please. Hit your mute button. Unmute.
Unmute. There we go. Okay. In response to the question, what can we do to educate younger people and educate our students about this? Maybe I'm biased because I teach on race, but I think it should be a required class, not just because it's my class, but at the junior high level, at the high school level, at the college level. How can you be considered an educated citizen who's ready to participate in a racial democracy if you don't know the history of race, the way that race has played a part in our society? And so, and that's more than just dragging out what Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King and once a year. But it's one of the things I've been encouraged by in this conversation so far for the last hour and a half almost is that we've been focusing this on this structural level, right? The way that this is institutionalized, the ways that it's built into our society. And so we need to keep that focus in mind, right? That if we're educating people, part of the socialization that people get through their education to prepare them to participate in our society needs to be that understanding of the history, where we are now, right? How we got to where we are now, so that we can reimagine a different future. Unfortunately, it's something that's often seen as not that necessary. That we keep making cuts to our education. Everything's supposed to be STEM. If it's not STEM, then it's not as valuable. Science, technology, education, engineering, and math. Those are 4 valuable areas, but we also need to be preparing people to be social members of our democracy, and to understand how government works, understand the history of the society, the issues that the society is facing, so that we can make decisions as voters and play a responsible role in that democracy. And we're just focusing and not just see people as potential profit generating cogs in the machine, but as people who can be contributing socially. So I think that kind of hopefully gets at Iqbal's question. Are we getting to my questions now? Is that where we're going, David?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
See the nodding. So along the lines of what we've been talking about, we often hear people say, well, I'm not racist. I don't see color. And we hear people making a distinction between being not racist and being anti-racist. So I want to kind of put a question out there for people, and then I'm happy to chime in responding too. Why is it important to admit that we see color? To understand that being not racist isn't possible. And what is anti-racism?
So I want that question to be considered by the students. And students, if you could give that some thought and respond, it would be good if you'd be the lead-in responders on that question from Dr. Moorhead.
Could you repeat the question again, Dr.
I certainly can repeat the questions, and hi, Taria. Why is it important to admit that we see color? That it's not possible to be not racist in this society. And what is anti-racism?
Okay, can I, I'm not sure if we're going in turn, but can I reply to that?
Go ahead, Aisha, go ahead.
Okay, he said that it's not possible to be not racist. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, the thing that I kind of just want to address, I can't speak for everybody else, but for myself, I feel like it is possible to not be racist. I think sometimes going through certain things in your life, it will take you through a transition of possibly at first feeling a certain way towards another race due to the fact of what may have been done to you, or things that may have been brought to your attention in a racist point of view, but that builds your character, that builds you as a person. I feel like it is possible not to be racist versus you saying it's not possible to be racist, just because with the situation with Mr. Floyd and what he's been through and everything that's been going on as far as Minnesota, plenty of states, St. Louis, everywhere, that have been things that have been going on, not just what has just happened recently with Floyd, but for years. I feel like everybody is a different person. Everybody's raised a different way. Everybody has different views. Everybody has learned different things, and that can have them be not racist. Sometimes you have to go through things in life in order to look at things in a different view. If I was to sit here and just be like, oh, I can't stand white people, or I don't get along with white people, or oh, I don't like cops because I got pulled over and I had a racial thing happen with me and my kids, then like you're saying that it needs to be changed, and a couple of people have been saying on here, as a community, we need to change. How am I changing? By viewing everyone as a cop, or viewing everyone as a race off of an experience that I've went through. So it is possible. I mean, even if you haven't even been through certain experience, it is very possible to not be racist, but it is also realistic, and it is life that you go through things that have you in the state of mind to where you do sometimes feel like there's a prejudice against you, whatever race you may be. Like, if, for instance, when the situation happened with New York and the bombing, people were looking at, you know, that culture a certain way, or if they see somebody, oh, are they gonna bomb, are they this? And, you know, it's prejudice everywhere. But in order to get out of that prejudice, as Tanya has stated and a couple of other people, you have to be that change, and the community has to be that change. If you stay in that state of mind of wanting to be racist and keep on having that burden on your shoulder of, oh, I was attacked, we're going to be stuck. We're going to have the same mindset. We're going to still look at things in a violent or whatever type of way you may look at things. So I just feel like that's not true. I feel like depending on the person, you can make a change, and there can be a difference. Prejudice doesn't just have to deal with racism. Prejudice can be the fact that you're a woman and you're trying to get a job and a man doesn't want to work for a woman. Prejudice comes in all forms, not just color. So like, you have to deform that prejudiceness, because it's not just prejudice. Prejudice is all type of things: color, female, male, homosexuality. So like, I just really
I appreciate the answer, and I think it's important part of the conversation that we there's sort of a common agreement on kind of what we're talking about in terms of the vocabulary, so we're not kind of understanding the same terms in different ways, right?
Okay.
One of the reasons in my class is I'm kind of, okay, we're going to start off with some key vocabulary for today's class. We're all kind of using the terms in the same way. So when and I'm building up, this isn't anything that I've come up individually, and building on the work of Angela Davis and Ibram Kendi and plenty of other scholars, in arguing that racism is sort of foundational in American society. Racism is like air pollution. We all breathe it in whether we want to or not. And we need to understand that given how deeply integrated it is into the systems, the structures, the institutions of American society, that affects all of us, right? It affects how we see ourselves, it affects how we see each other. So the first part in saying that in trying to tear down this system is to not say, oh, not me, I don't apply to me, but to kind of say, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but it's a reaction we often hear from plenty of people, that but to say, okay, the only way we can't address this racism that is built into the system until without active effort, right? It's like you can't stop the pollution that's in the environment by saying, well, I'm not polluting, and then just leave the pollution out there. We need active efforts to clean the environment. We need active efforts to tear down, to reconstruct this society in a way that is addressing that racism. So that is the anti-racism part. And it's also acknowledging that as much as, I've been studying and teaching on this stuff for 20 years, and I can't say, well, after 20 years, I have some special certificate that certifies me as being not racist. It's a part of how I see the world. It's a part of how everyone sees the world. We need to acknowledge how that's a part of us, right? Whether we want it to be there or not. And once we acknowledge it, then we can start taking active steps to address it, to tear it down, to move from saying, well, I'm not racist, to saying, it's affected me too, and I'm to be an anti-racist, to go about taking active steps to fix this stuff, rather than pretend that it's like, well, I don't see color. Because I would say there's nothing wrong with seeing color. People have different colors. The problem comes with having some negative association attached to those other colors, what you interpret it as meaning when you see other colors. Because if people say that they are blind to color, then they're also blind to the consequences of color, to the privileges that some people have, and the negative effects that other people suffer because of their color. If we can acknowledge the system, see the breadth and the depth of the system, then we can start taking those active steps to tear it down, like defunding the police or reimagining policing in our society in a way that doesn't use the criminal justice system to address a variety of ills and issues in our society.
I think the criminal justice system is the reason why people are addressing the criminal justice system, because you have a lot of people that are, as far as police officers, they're okay, we're just going to put it out there. There are a lot of police officers that become officers that are racist. So they don't join the police force to serve and protect. They join the police force to bash, to come at Hispanics, African Americans, or if they're mad, or if there is a Caucasian American that is for the Hispanics and African Americans, they go after them. So we need to address that too. It does have something to do with, it does start with criminal justice, due to the fact that half of the things that are going on, if you look in the news, like with the one, I forget the guy's name, where he was just walking and the ex-police officer and his son attacked him. He was an ex-police officer. But if you go deeper into the background, he was part of racist groups and things that are going on. If you want to go into Trump and his background, or how his dad, or the vice president, or how his dad is part of the KKK, people don't want to address. You don't want to bring criminal justice system into it. And I'm not saying that everybody in the criminal justice system is bad, but you also have to address. And if you want to make a change or a difference, be honest with yourself. Everyone needs to be honest with themselves, including police officers as well, that you do have officers that are targeting people. They're not there to help. So therefore, until something is done within that justice system, we're going to continue to have these problems until there are more people that are actually becoming police officers to serve and protect every race, not just to go out there and, oh, okay, I'm going to pull this over because I can. A lot of people flash that badge around and use it as I can do or say or speak to you any kind of way I want to. First of all, a lot of people need to learn how to speak to people, not talk at people, but speak to them. That goes a long way when you can talk to a person and not at a person. A lot of these police officers, they come across as, because they're high in authority, that they can just feel that they can talk to you any old kind of way and you can't voice your opinion. And that's where a lot of these incidents come, because you want to be respected, but you're not giving us the respect that you're not giving us the respect on the other end. So, I mean, it does, that's the whole problem. That has been police brutality. That's been the whole ordeal that's been going on due to police brutality. That's why the communities are mad. It's not just the reason why the people in Minnesota are mad, because if some of you did not know, before this incident happened, another incident in Minnesota happened where the police officers got off. They were just suspended with pay. They never were sent to jail. They never went to jail. They got off for the case for killing yet another African-American person. So this incident with Mr. Floyd was like an icebreaker because people are tired.
Okay,
They're tired.
So let's do this for where we are with our time. I want to try to see if we can get as many voices for the time we have left prior to somebody raise an issue in the chat about a call to action. You're going to hear some call to action regarding what's been considered and what is being considered by the Black students from COD and those in our community. But before we do that, just in the order, I do want to allow maybe one or two others, and then we'll see if we can get in one of our other panelists. We may not be able to get in all of our core panelists where we are with respect to our time, but I believe I had Sam Matrani, who wanted to chime in, and then we will go to our next panelist, if you will. Sam?
So I want to start by thanking students and faculty members who participated for putting together this vital and really interesting panel. Thank you guys. I've already learned something from listening to you all. I want to make a slightly different point. As a historian of police, we can find dozens of times, maybe hundreds of times, if you look across the different cities in this country, where people have reacted against police violence and where politicians have backpedaled and have had to kind of pose as if they're making reforms and have said things like, we need to defund the police, we need to reimagine the police. This happened actually before police had unions. It happened in northern cities before there were even large numbers of Black people in them. And every time we see the same problems come back. In different forms maybe, but we see police violence come back. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because in a society organized to put the profits of a ruling class above the futures of a huge layer of the population, you need police violence to control that part of the population. And in this society born in slavery, the part of the population that has suffered the consequences of all the social problems created by capitalism disproportionately from the beginning has been the Black population. So I don't think racism is just a psychological thing. Little kids raised together do not grow up necessarily to be racist. It's not true. And it's not just a learned thing, like your parents raise you to be racist. We live in a society that is structured in a deeply racist way. Which part of the population bears the brunt of unemployment, of underfunded schools, of substandard housing, and of police violence? It's not a mistake that all of these problems hit the same part of the population. So me personally, my own idea is, if we want to take on the root of police violence, we have to take on the organization of a society that funnels, let's say in the last few weeks, $6 trillion in liquidity to the financial system, but can't find money to fund hospitals in poor neighborhoods when people are facing a pandemic, that can't provide everybody with a guaranteed right to a job that gives them a decent living. And if we want to take on that system, we have to start talking about capitalism and not just about the racist ideas in the heads of the mostly liberal people who live in the burbs around here. I don't think that's where the solution lies. Thank you.
Sam, I want to get to Clifford. Clifford, if you're still there and you have a comment, I'm trying to get them in the order that I see them.
Yeah, I actually have two comments. One is to Jamon Lewis. I believe facts are very important. I think what he said was very profound. But he did say the cops don't live in the city that they service. Quick research, I went online. Chicago police do have a residency requirement to live in the city limits. But you are right, they do not live in the areas they police. I believe that taking police out of squad cars and having them walk the beat like they used to would be better. They get to know the people they're policing, get to know them on a personal level, and actually learn to interact with the people. Black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, it doesn't matter. Put them in the areas, stop this racism across the board. You see racism everywhere. It is out there. It's not. Hopefully it will change. Hopefully it will get less and less. But with the police, and this is directed to Nate. He discussed how, they're told to do, not profile this and that. But speaking from experience, my best friend George Labordi, who is a Black Cuban, and whenever I got pulled over, when we were 16, I started noticing how the dichotomy between how I was treated by police and how he was treated, and how we were treated together at the same time. I would get pulled over in the car alone. It'd be, give me your license, let me see your insurance, and okay, here's your ticket, have a good day. Now enter George into the car. All of a sudden we're being pulled out of the car is being searched. And when we went to tell the police, why are you acting like this, we're told to shut up. And some officers would just shrug their shoulders. And Nate, the camaraderie, the brotherhood of police, there's this atmosphere of hiding. And you could see it in the George Floyd. The cop stands in front of the camera to hide what one officer is doing, because that is the society that police live in. I cannot go against what another officer does. And case in point is, how many DUIs do officers get, and how often are you in a bar where you see a drunk officer going to their car, get and drive on the road? And if they get pulled over, they don't get DUIs because they're protected. So when a person of color is pulled over, even if there's a white person in the car, you can see the discrimination, this disparity, how I am treated and how they are treated and how we're treated together. All of a sudden, you're treated as a criminal. And it's one bad apple, one bad police officer will spoil the bunch. I will tell you that right now. You will get one bigoted officer and the other 4 will not speak up and say anything, because heaven forbid you break that brotherhood of police and trust, because then you would be ostracized from the department because you stood up against another officer. That is where the systemic racism comes from, because one officer does something bad, the other 3 aren't willing to speak up. That's where police need to be trained. That's my only comments. Sorry for getting up, being loud about it.
Jamon, you said you want to respond real quick.
Yeah, I agree of much of what Mr. Clifford said, Mr. Hedquist said. Yeah, I think I was referring to cops, Chicago Police Department officers don't have to live in the city until, and of course, like you said, they're in a lot of segregated communities. Yeah, one of the experiences you kind of spoke about, I kind of experienced where I was pulled over by myself in the city, and they pulled me over, didn't tell me why they pulled me over, took me out of my car, ransacked the car for drugs, and then right after they put me in cuffs, right before they sent me on my way, because they didn't find anything. Obviously, I didn't have anything. They said that obstruction in your window, that's illegal, so you're gonna want to remove that. And the obstruction was a pine tree air freshener that you hang from the middle of your window. So we can see that a lot of times they pull people over, it's erroneous stops, it's for no reason, and they're literally just looking to profile somebody, like you said.
Exactly. I saw both sides of it, because I got pulled over the first time alone, and it's license registration, have a great day, here's your ticket. Enter my friend George Laborde, and all of a sudden we're being dragged out of the car, put on the ground, and we're treated like, excuse the expression, but total shit. And when we tried to comment and said, hey, what do? We didn't do anything. The officer said, shut up. There was no conversation. When we told them no, we're not going to allow them to search the car, all of a sudden we're criminals. It's like, it's just, it's sick. And even if there's 3 good officers and 1 bad officer, those 3 other officers are going to protect that 1 bad officer, because that's the way they're trained. So that's all I got to say about that right now.
Thank you guys for the conversation. One other, I want to go to Sharon Jones if she was there and has a comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sharon. I work in the music department. I just want to say that just now there was a protest in downtown Naperville. There were 100 young people there. They took a knee in the main intersection for 9 minutes. It's been very active here. My concern is that we are very much in a movement, but I would like to keep the momentum going. I especially am concerned that young people may not be registered to vote. I'm concerned that maybe they are not interacting as much with their state and local representatives who could enact these changes on this local level. And I want to know if students have the resources to do that, and if they need a place to go to get these resources, to learn about who the representatives are and to register to vote. Thanks.
Does anybody want to field that question?
Well, Illinois have automatic voter registration. You have to opt out. You're renewing your driver's license. They automatically register you to vote unless you explicitly tell them not to. And has same-day voter registration so that you can show up with your documents on election day, register and vote. We're lucky to be in a state that has that kind of flexibility.
So what I'm going to do for the sake of time with our panelists, I know we have 3 left that we haven't got to, but I'm going to ask for the flexibility of the discussion. I want to see if we can get Stephanie Quirk, who is the coordinator of student life leadership development, to perhaps chime in. just from the perspective, to add in a slightly diverse perspective from what we've heard. Dr. Cork, if you want to chime in for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for our students who are on and chiming in. And just to the previous question from Sharon, a little bit about the voter registration, voter education efforts on our campus. So the Student Leadership Council for the past 2 years and previously has really focused on this more locally to our campus. We have a new initiative that's hopefully rolling out. It was meant to roll out this spring called COD Votes. And actually Manuel was a key implementer in deciding on that as a focus issue for our campus. And the hope is that our incoming president and trustee are going to carry forward that work. So we are looking for allies in that for sure, who are interested in supporting voter registration, voter education on our campus. To segue a little bit, one of the things that I'm really privileged to do is work with our student leaders and talk quite a bit about leadership and leadership development. And the first thing that I wanted to visit on was this concept of leadership, the idea of leadership. I feel it's a very loaded term, word in general, because we connect many things to the word leadership and the concept automatically, maybe without even realizing it. So we oftentimes think of leadership as power. We think of leadership as authority, as folks in charge, people who are the boss in a very structural way. And what I try to do is challenge folks to think about leadership a little bit differently, to think about it in terms of our ability to make positive change, whether that's through active participation, appreciating and understanding other perspectives, as has been demonstrated here, and conscious decision making. And when we do those three things to have that positive impact, that's what I like to talk about as leadership. So it begs the question to our students right now: what do you expect from your leaders at this time? You know, I do think we're in a crucible moment. We've been here before. Previous students have made efforts to see change on our campus. We've had conversations like this before on our campus. And we have, I feel, have made some progress, but obviously we're here again. So I would like to know, you know, their thoughts, feelings on what their expectations of leaders and leadership in our community locally and beyond.
So for the students, where that's been proposed, and Dr. Cork, I don't know if that is even an interesting segue into action items to some extent, but for the students that have heard the question, if you want to respond, because it's directed towards you for your response.
Yeah, for sure. So yesterday with Dr. Montez, we came up with some call to action items, if we could call them that. So the first thing we said is that we ask that every member of the College DuPage community, employees and students, be required to attend a yearly mandatory training on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We ask that this training be a collaboration between students, faculty, and administration. Another thing we asked for was that the College of DuPage invest in a multicultural center. We believe that is a dedicated space for students to gather and learn is essential for a sense of belonging and also essential to the promotion of diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. You guys want me to read the other two, or Manuel and Justin, do you guys want to read them?
I could read the other two. Another call to action that we want to ask for is that the Black Student Alliance and the College of DuPage president, Dr. Caputo, meet monthly to discuss issues of relevance to the BSA and to the student body as well. It'd be good to just check in monthly just to update on anything new, and just so that there's a line of communication between the students and the staff and the faculty as well, just so we're all on one accord. And then another thing we want to ask for is that the College of DuPage faculty and staff actively participate and support BSA events and programs. By participating participation, we mean attend events, promote events, and collaborate with us on events. We'd like to see participation in events beyond Black History Month. That would show that you guys are with us and that you're for us and that you want to see us succeed as well. And having that support system as well definitely will build some confidence in students, and that I'm sure will make everybody, achieve greater.
We also ask that the Pan-African flag be raised in the International Hall as a symbol of representation of the unity of students of the African diaspora. So we just want, to see more action from the school and more, we want to have that culture of, African people of color, all different ethnicities, but we want to focus on, Black and brown communities right now that are struggling.
Going to ask Dr. Montez if you would like to chime in for a second on that, as she's worked in conjunction with the students and with us, Devin and myself, in that regard. So Dr. Montez, if you care to have something to say to that.
I think the students have spoken for themselves. I'm speechless. I'm so proud of everything that they've presented today. I will say in support of them, one of the things that they were especially passionate about yesterday when we spoke was really this idea of being tired of just talking about things, and really the importance of seeing what they're talking about be put into action, and also really wanting to see change within the College of DuPage community. So again, I appreciate the students' efforts and really their ability to articulate what their needs are at this time.
Thank you. And I want to recognize the College of DuPage Police Department. I believe some of the representatives may have been on this call. And I think some of them shared a comment or two, but we definitely want to recognize them, the nature of the call, and some of the comments that were made. And I will say that, you can't put everything in its racist context directly correlation to Black people in police. It's a whole lot more than that. I do want to recognize the president of College of DuPage, Dr. Brian Caputo. Dr. Caputo, if you are on and would like to have something to say, we certainly would like to hear your voice.
Well, just briefly, I'm extremely proud of the effort that has gone into organizing this event on the behalf of the Black Student Alliance, on behalf of David Swope and others that have been there to make this very important conversation occur. I feel like this is a good departure point for us. I think we're all learning a lot. There's a lot to take in, but I think I'm very confident that moving forward that we are going to make progress in anti-racism on this campus. So I'll just leave it at that.
We thank you, Dr. Caputo. I know we had two others in Professor Shaheen Chowdhury. We had adjunct faculty Dorothy O'Neill. But for the sake of time, if you guys want to say something very quickly, just out of respect, maybe about a minute to say something that you want to say because you took time in terms of that, and then we'll wrap it up after that. If either one of you would like to say something.
I would like to say something as the Student Leadership Council.
Sure.
We will continue working with BSA in this project, and as SC is working at the moment, a statement for George Floyd, and as well as a project that we're gonna collab with BSA and other organizations and clubs at COD, and with that, the power with like the COD clubs and organizations empowered to help out BSA in this long run throughout this semester and the year. We will also say thank you to them, and please, Manuel and Justin, they work out their efforts for introducing us, the SOC, to work with them, as well as David Swope and Stephanie Quirk in this call.
Again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming, everyone for organizing this event. We really appreciate it. Again, we had so many great ideas today. Everyone spoke, like, it was just amazing to see everyone come together. The turnout was amazing. And again, like, please look forward to like everything we have planned with SLC and Black Student Alliance. So again, thank you so much. And not just a moment, a movement.
And so with that, I'm going to say thank you all, but I'm going to leave. This has been recorded, so we're going to work on how this is posted, where it goes, so that we can continue to build from this information. Listen, this particular thing, as the students have said, this session is not a moment. This is a continuation to build in terms of healthy dialogue. Please continue to come to the conversation. Listen, we have to face what we've been dealing with as a country head on. And if we can't do it as a group of people that's been designated to teach the next generation from a truth perspective, from a relevant perspective, to be adaptive, then we're not doing the right service that we should to our students. So I believe COD is well equipped to do it, even though it's challenging work. We can't continue to be the way we are as a country in terms of certain things that we've been turning our eye against or away from. We got to look at it, and then we have to address it. But I'm going to leave the last comments to go to Manuel, Taria, and Justin, the representatives of the Black Student Alliance. And with that, I'll say thank you, and I'll leave it up to them. Thank you, guys.
My last comment is to thank everyone who joined this call. You know, you joining this call shows that you want to learn more and you're for the movement, and that in itself is the support that we seek, and hopefully we can continue to grow from this. But like we continue to reiterate, this is not just a moment, this is a movement. Let's keep this going. While we have this momentum, let's continue to strive to do better and be better. Let's continue to learn more and educate ourselves so that we can go out to educate more people. This is something that is a continuous cycle that we have to put our foot on the gas, and we have to keep it there. So I appreciate everyone for joining this call, and let's keep it going.
Yes, just like Manuel has stated, I want to thank everyone for coming and for helping us and engaging in this very well-needed conversation. I think that the ball is in our court now more than ever. So like Manuel stated before as well, we need to keep the momentum going. This is not just a moment, it is a movement. And if we all can work together to do our parts and put our expertise, wherever that may be, together, we can really make a change in this country that has been long overdue, but no better time than now. So thank you again for coming and engaging in conversation with us today.
I'd also like to reiterate everything they said. Thank you guys for showing up and being here and really showing, you know, BSA and actually all of the faculty and staff here that all of you guys want to instill change in our own culture and our own community. And at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it does start with us, and you guys are taking that first step to instill that change. So I do want, you know, I'm hearing a lot, you know, of people saying change is not going to happen within our lifetime, but honestly it is, and it's going to happen very fast, and it's going to start with us, and that's the change we will instill. So thank you guys for being here, and we appreciate the love and support, and we're going to continue this movement. And you know, you're going to see something soon, and you guys are going to be there with us, and we cannot wait for the support, and we cannot wait to instill this change. So thank you. So just for the final comments, BSA, stay tuned on their Instagram. Our Instagram is BSA_COD. We will be putting flyers out there and more information on A46. This is not a moment, this is a movement. And Dr. Caputo, I did see your comment in there that you want to meet with us leaders. So we will be knocking at your door and we will be there. So thank you for that invitation.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.